Captain Elena Vasquez checked her uniform one last time before stepping onto the station platform. 15 years of service had taught her that first impressions mattered when dealing with alien species. Her crisp blue peacekeeping uniform bore the symbols of the Galactic Concordat, a circle of stars representing unity among the different worlds. The negotiation station floated in space between two contested planets. Below them, the green world of Tertius III sparkled with cities and forests. It was beautiful, but Elena knew beauty often hid ugly truths. "Captain, the Korthak delegation is waiting in Conference Room 7, said Lieutenant Martinez, her aide. His young face looked worried. "The Zephyrians haven't arrived yet." Elena nodded and walked through the station's corridors. Other peacekeepers from different species moved past her. Tall, blue-skinned Altarians, insect-like wrecks with their clicking sounds, and even a few of the mysterious ethereals who rarely left their homeworlds. All of them worked to keep peace in the galaxy. The Korthak delegation sat around a metal table when Elena entered. She had dealt with their species before. They stood 7 feet tall with gray, scaly skin and yellow eyes that seemed to look right through you. High Commander Thekvar led their group. His scarred face told stories of many battles. "Human," Thekvar said without standing. His voice sounded like grinding stone. "We expected someone more experienced." Elena sat down calmly. "Commander, I have successfully mediated 43 disputes in my career. My experience speaks for itself." Thekvar's mouth twisted into what might have been a smile. "Yes, we know about human peacekeepers. Always talking about rights and laws. Always believing everyone wants peace." The Zephyrian delegation arrived. An hour later. Elena had never worked with their species before. They looked almost human, but with pale, silvery skin and large eyes that seemed to glow softly. Their leader, Ambassador Kirith, moved with fluid grace. "Honored Peacekeeper," Kirith said, bowing slightly. "We thank you for coming. Our people need your help." The negotiations began like many others Elena had handled. The Korthaks claimed mining rights to 3 moons around Tertius III. The Zephyrians said those moons were sacred burial grounds for their ancestors. Both sides presented documents, treaties, and historical claims, but something felt wrong. Elena noticed how the Zephyrians flinched when Korthak voices grew loud. She saw fear in their glowing eyes, not the normal tension of negotiation, but deep terror. On the second day, Ambassador Kirith requested a private meeting. Elena met him in a small chamber away from the main conference rooms. The Zephyrian's hand shook as he activated a privacy shield. "Captain Vasquez," he whispered, "what I am about to show you could start a war." He handed her a data pad containing files and images. Elena's stomach turned as she read. The Korthaks weren't just mining those moons. They had built facilities there, facilities for breaking and training slaves. The images showed Zephyrian prisoners in metal cages. Their eyes, usually bright with inner light, were dull and empty. Elena saw children among them, some barely old, enough to walk. The files described experiments, torture methods, and breeding programs. "They use our natural psychic abilities," Kirith explained, tears rolling down his silver face. "They break our minds first, then our bodies. The ones who survive become perfect slaves, smart enough to work but too broken to resist." Elena's hands clenched the data pad. "How long has this been happening?" 3 years. We tried to stop them, but they are too strong. When we complained to local authorities, they said it was an internal Korthak matter. Our people keep disappearing, from border worlds." Elena studied the evidence for hours. The files showed locations, names, numbers. Over 50,000 Zephyrians had vanished. The Korthaks had turned slavery into a science. The next day, Elena confronted Thekvar with the evidence. The Korthak commander didn't even pretend to deny it. "So," he said, looking at the images without emotion, "they are a weaker species. In nature, the strong rule the weak. This violates every principle of the Galactic Concordat," Elena said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "These are sentient beings, not animals." Thekvar stood up, towering over her. "Humans," he hissed, "always so naive about the realities of power. You speak of laws and rights as if they matter to superior species. Elena transmitted her findings to Earth and the Concordate Council immediately. The evidence was clear. This wasn't a border dispute about mining rights. This was systematic genocide and slavery on a massive scale. But before any response could arrive from Earth, Korthak soldiers stormed into her quarters. They moved fast, using stun weapons that dropped Elena to the floor. As darkness took her, she heard Thekvar's voice. The human has been gathering intelligence on sovereign Korthak operations. This is espionage. Elena woke up in a metal cage. Around her, she saw dozens of Zephyrian prisoners, all staring with those empty, broken eyes. She was in one of the facilities from the files, underground on one of the contested moons. Thekvar appeared outside her cage with several other Korthak officers. Captain Elena Vasquez, he announced formally. You stand accused of interference in internal hegemony affairs and espionage against a sovereign state. This isn't a trial, Elena said, standing despite her injuries. This is murder. We follow our own laws here, human. You will be executed by neural extraction, a process that dissolves consciousness slowly while keeping the body alive. Your death will be broadcast across our space as a warning to other interfering species. They dragged her to a chamber filled with alien technology. Medical devices hummed with deadly purpose. Cameras focused on her face, ready to transmit her death across Korthak space. Elena managed to activate her emergency transmitter one last time. This is Captain Elena Vasquez, Galactic Peacekeeper Service, she said as they strapped her to the extraction table. The Korthak hegemony is committing crimes against sentient life on a massive scale. 50,000 Zephyrians are dead or enslaved. The neural extraction began. Elena felt her thoughts becoming fuzzy, her memories starting to fade, but she forced herself to continue speaking. Remember what we stand for, she whispered into the transmitter. Don't let them break what we've built. Justice. Justice matters more than peace. The pain was incredible. Elena felt her mind coming apart piece by piece while her body stayed alive. The Korthaks had designed this torture to last for days. They wanted other species to see what happened when you interfered with their business. But Elena had one last message, spoken through screams of agony that reached across space to Earth. They think mercy is weakness. Show them. Show them they're wrong. Captain Elena Vasquez died on the 4th day, her consciousness finally fading as billions across the galaxy watched in horror. The woman who had spent 15 years building peace between species became a symbol of what happened when evil met. No resistance. Her last words were heard clearly across every communication channel. Some things are worth fighting for. The galaxy had seen human peacekeepers die before, but they had never seen one die like this, defiant to the end, speaking truth even as her mind dissolved. They had never seen the look in Elena's eyes as she faced her torturers. Not fear, but pity. Elena Vasquez died believing in justice. Soon the galaxy would learn what justice looked like when humans stopped asking permission to deliver it. President Sarah Chen sat in her office at midnight, watching Elena's death for the 3rd time. The recording had reached Earth 6 hours ago. Every major news network was broadcasting it. The woman's screams echoed through the halls of power, and Chen felt something cold settle in her chest. Madam President, her aide whispered from the doorway, the emergency session is ready. Chen walked into the parliament chamber where 800 representatives waited in complete silence. The massive screen at the front showed Elena's face. Not her death, but a photo from her graduation day 15 years ago. Young, hopeful, believing she could make the galaxy a better place. They filmed it, Defense Secretary Morrison said, his voice shaking with rage. They wanted us to see. They wanted us to know what happens when humans stand up for what's right. Chen looked around the chamber. She saw tears on faces that hadn't cried in decades. She saw hands clenched so tight that knuckles had gone white. She saw the fury of a species that had spent 200 years learning to control its violent nature. Admiral Zhang Wei, head of the Human Defense Fleet, stood at attention. His weathered face showed no emotion, but Chen could see the storm behind. His eyes, Admiral, Chen said quietly, what is the Concordate's official response? They're demanding we file a formal complaint through proper channels. Ambassador Telvar estimates 18 to 24 months for a resolution. They suggest economic sanctions and diplomatic pressure. A sound went through the chamber, not quite a laugh, not quite a growl. 800 representatives hearing that their most honored peacekeeper's torture murder would be handled through paperwork and committee meetings. Admiral Zhang, Chen continued, her voice getting colder. In your professional opinion, what would Captain Vasquez want us to do? Zhang was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words carried the weight of 40 years of military service. Madam President, Elena Vasquez spent her entire career believing that civilization meant restraint. She believed we were better than our ancestors who solved problems with violence. Zhang paused, his jaw tight. But she also believed that some things are worth fighting for. Representative Williams from the African Union stood up. Madam President, we haven't fought a real war in over a century. Our military exists for peacekeeping and disaster relief. Are we even capable of— Sir, Admiral Zhang interrupted. With respect, you're thinking like a politician. Captain Vasquez died thinking like a soldier. She knew what she was doing when she sent that evidence. She knew what would happen to her. The chamber fell silent again. On the screen, Elena's photo was replaced by images from the Korthak slave facilities. Children in cages, broken minds, 50,000 dead or worse than dead. Chen stood up slowly. I call for an immediate vote on Resolution 2847, complete withdrawal from all Galactic Concordate treaties and agreements. The gasps echoed through the chamber. No species had ever voluntarily left the Concordate. It meant giving up trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and 2 centuries of careful diplomacy. Furthermore, Chen continued, I call for the immediate activation of Protocol 7. The chamber went completely silent. Protocol 7 was a myth, a rumor. Most people thought it was just paranoid planning from the early days of human space travel. But Admiral Zhang's small smile told everyone it was very, very real. Representative Martinez from the South American Alliance raised her hand. Madam President, what exactly is Protocol 7? Admiral Zhang answered. Protocol 7 assumes that humanity might someday face an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with, an enemy that would see our peaceful nature as weakness. It's our plan for fighting a war without limits. The vote was unanimous. 800 representatives, speaking for 20 billion humans across 40 worlds, made the same choice. For the first time since joining galactic civilization, humanity would stand alone. The message went out to every species in known space within the hour. The Korthak hegemony has 72 hours to surrender every individual involved in the torture murder of Captain Elena Vasquez. They will also immediately release all Zephyrian prisoners and submit to concordate oversight of their territory. Failure to comply will result in consequences beyond their comprehension. The Korthak response came back in less than an hour. Let the hairless apes come. We will teach them the price of interfering with their betters. Across human space, ancient systems came online. Shipyards that had been building civilian transports for decades suddenly switched to classified designs. Research stations that studied peaceful applications of technology began dusting off weapons development files. On Mars, the old military academies reopened their doors. Veterans who had spent their careers on peacekeeping missions found themselves recalled to active duty. The children and grandchildren of Earth's greatest warriors answered a call their ancestors would have recognized. Dr. Sarah Kim, head of the Prometheus Research Station, received new orders that made her hands shake. You want me to what? She asked Admiral Zhang over secure video link. Everything, Doctor. Every theoretical weapon we've designed but never built. Every technology we've developed but kept classified. Elena Vasquez died believing in restraint. Honor her memory by showing the galaxy why restraint was a choice, not a weakness. The orders went out to research stations, military bases, and classified facilities across human space. Project Nemesis, theoretical antimatter weapons that could crack planets. Project Medusa, nanotechnology that could shut down entire technological civilizations. Project Pandora, biological weapons designed to target specific alien biology. For 2 centuries, humanity had developed these weapons in secret while publicly supporting disarmament treaties. Every human military officer knew the truth. They served a species that could destroy galactic civilization but chose not to. Admiral Zhang called his senior staff together in the war room beneath Geneva. The chamber hadn't been used for real military planning in over 100 years. Ancient maps and tactical displays came to life, showing every known Korthak world and military installation. "Gentlemen," Zhang said to the assembled officers, "we are about to fight the first total war in human history since World War III. The enemy has 26 worlds, a fleet of 8,000 ships, and a population of 16 billion. General Morrison, Zhang's oldest friend, looked at the tactical displays. "Admiral, our official fleet has maybe 300 ships. Even with Protocol 7, how do we—" "General," Zhang interrupted with a cold smile. "You're still thinking, like a peacekeeper. We're not going to fight them ship to ship. We're going to teach them why humans ruled Earth through intelligence, not just strength." The first wave of human ships left dock 70 hours after the ultimatum expired. They weren't the sleek white vessels of the human defense fleet. These ships were black as space itself, with hulls that seemed to absorb light. No identification markings, no communication arrays, no way to trace them back to Earth. The crews wore masks bearing Elena's name. They had resigned their official commissions to fight a war their governments couldn't officially wage. They called themselves the Vasquez Corps. But behind them, something far more terrifying was building. Admiral Zhang's flagship, newly renamed the Elena Vasquez, prepared to show the galaxy what humans looked like when they stopped pretending to be civilized. In her quarters aboard the flagship, Chen recorded a final message to be broadcast when the real war began. Elena Vasquez died believing in peace. She died believing that different species could live together without violence. The Korthaks proved her wrong about them. Now we will prove her right about us. Justice is coming, and it wears a human face. The first Korthak colony to die was called Haktar 7. It was a mining world on the edge of their space, far from major trade routes. The colonists there had heard about the human ultimatum but weren't worried. Humans were peacekeepers, not warriors. Everyone knew that. Commander Velok was drinking his evening meal when the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. His communication officer tried to reach the orbital defense platforms but got only static. "Sir," the officer reported, "we're getting no response from orbit. All satellite links are down." Velok wasn't too concerned. Technical failures happened. But then the power grid collapsed completely. The water treatment plant stopped working. The atmospheric processors that kept the colony's air breathable began shutting down one by one. "What kind of attack is this?" Velok demanded as his staff worked frantically at dead control panels. The answer came 12 hours later when masked figures appeared throughout the colony. They moved like ghosts through the darkened streets, leaving calling cards on every door, small pieces of metal with Elena's name carved into them. The humans didn't kill anyone that first day. They just systematically dismantled everything that made the colony function. Food storage facilities mysteriously lost power. Medical centers found their equipment failing. Communication arrays went silent. By the third day, Velok was begging his superiors for evacuation ships. But the same thing was happening across 12 other Korthak border worlds. Masked humans were everywhere, turning advanced civilizations into helpless survivors overnight. High Commander Thekvar, the same alien who had ordered Elena's execution, watched the reports from his command center on Korthak Prime. His yellow eyes blazed with fury as world after world went dark. "How many humans are doing this?" he demanded. "We estimate maybe 1,000, his intelligence chief replied. "But sir, they're not fighting like any military we understand. They hit our infrastructure, not our forces. They disappear before we can respond. It's like fighting shadows." Thekvar slammed his clawed hand on the control panel. "They are insects. Send the 5th Fleet to burn out every human nest we can find." But when the 5th Fleet arrived at Haktar 7, they found something impossible. The colony was completely intact. Every building, every facility, every piece of equipment. But every single Korthak was gone. 16,000 colonists had simply vanished without a trace. The fleet admiral searched through empty buildings and found a message painted on the colony's main administration building in perfect Korthak script. Your people are safe. They are learning the value of freedom. The Vasquez Corps. The same scene repeated across Korthak space. Colonies went dark, fleets arrived to find empty worlds, and messages appeared promising that the missing Korthaks were being educated, somewhere safe. But the Vasquez Corps was just the beginning. Behind them, something far more terrifying approached. The actual human defense fleet, no longer bound by treaties or diplomatic restraint. Admiral Zhang's flagship, the Elena Vasquez, emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Korthak Central Command, with an escort that made the alien sensors scream warnings. 300 human ships, but not the vessels the galaxy knew from peacekeeping missions. These were monsters. Each ship bristled with weapons that violated every arms control treaty humanity had ever signed. Energy cannons that could melt through planetary shields. Missile systems that could track targets across star systems. And stranger things, weapons that the Korthak's sensors couldn't even identify. This is Admiral Zhang Wei of the Human Defense Fleet. His message broadcast across all frequencies. We are no longer bound by concordant restrictions on warfare. You have seen what we are capable of when we choose restraint. Now you will learn what we are capable of when we choose otherwise. High Commander Thekvar tried to respond with his own threats, but Admiral Zhang wasn't interested in conversation. Thekvar, Zhang's voice cut through the alien's bluster. You ordered the torture murder of Captain Elena Vasquez. You filmed her death to frighten other species. You believed that cruelty was strength and mercy was weakness. The human fleet moved into attack formation, but they didn't fire their weapons. Instead, something else happened. Something that made every Korthak in the system freeze in terror. The orbital defense platforms around Korthak Prime simply turned off. The massive fortifications that protected their homeworld went silent and dark. The planetary shields that could stop a fleet bombardment flickered and died. How? Thekvar whispered, staring at his dead control panels. Zhang's answer came from everywhere at once. Every speaker, every communicator, every electronic device in the system. We built your computers, Thekvar. We designed your networks, for 2 centuries. Every piece of technology you bought from human manufacturers contained our code. We were always inside your systems. We just chose not to use that access. The Korthak fleet tried to fight back, but their ships wouldn't respond to commands. Their weapons wouldn't fire. Their engines wouldn't start. 16 billion aliens sat, helpless as 300 human ships surrounded their homeworld. But the humans still didn't fire. Elena Vasquez believed in justice, Zhang announced. Justice means punishment fits the crime. You enslaved 50,000 Zephyrians. You tortured one human peacekeeper to death. So we will teach you what it feels like to be powerless. What happened next became legend throughout the galaxy. In a single day, the human fleet transported every Korthak in their home system to detention facilities scattered across the outer rim. 16 billion aliens moved without violence, without death, but with an efficiency that terrified every other species. The Korthaks found themselves in comfortable but escape-proof facilities. They had food, water, medical care, everything they needed to live. What they didn't have was freedom, technology, or weapons. They were prisoners but alive. Their homeworld was left intact but empty. The great cities of Korthak Prime stood silent, monuments to a species that had pushed humanity too far. A single message appeared on every surface in the empty cities, written in letters a mile high. Elena Vasquez believed in mercy. This is what mercy looks like when delivered by humans. But the most terrifying part wasn't what the humans had done. It was how easily they had done it. An empire that had dominated 3 star systems for over 1,000 years had been dismantled in less than a week. Ambassador Telvar of the Concordat Council sent an urgent message to every species in known space. The humans have revealed capabilities we never suspected. They didn't just defeat the Korthaks. They erased them as a political entity while keeping every single one alive. Do you understand what this means? The precision required? The technological superiority? President Chen addressed the galaxy from the bridge of the Elena Vasquez, surrounded by the masked figures of the Vasquez Corps and the officers who had planned this impossible victory. For 2 centuries, Chen said calmly, we have honored the Concordate's principles. We have accepted limitations on our military, restrictions on our technology, oversight of our expansion. We did this because Captain Elena Vasquez and thousands like her convinced us that civilization was worth these sacrifices. Behind her, Elena's image appeared, not the broken victim from the Korthak torture chamber, but the proud peacekeeper who had spent 15 years building bridges between species. Elena believed that strength should serve peace, that the powerful should protect the weak, that justice was more important than efficiency. Chen's voice grew harder. The Korthaks taught us that not everyone shares these values. They showed us what happens when we extend trust to those who see mercy as weakness. Admiral Zhang stepped forward, his weathered face showing no emotion. The human defense fleet is hereby withdrawing from all concordate oversight. Our technology, our weapons, our expansion, these are no longer subject to galactic law. We tried, playing by rules written by committee. Now we play by Elena's rules. The Concordate Chancellor's response came through trembling communication channels. And what are Elena's rules? Zhang's smile was cold as winter on Earth. Protect the innocent, punish the guilty, show mercy to those who deserve it. His hand moved to a weapon at his side, something that radiated energy signatures no alien sensor could identify. And make examples of those who don't. The emergency session of the Galactic Concordate Council had been going for 6 hours, and nobody wanted to say what everyone was thinking. 23 species sat around the ancient council chamber, representatives from civilizations that had ruled space for thousands of years, but today they all felt very small. Ambassador Telvar of the Alterian Republic stood at the center of the chamber, his blue skin pale with fear. Honored colleagues, he said, his voice shaking, we must face the truth. In 7 days, humanity has rewritten the balance of power in our galaxy. The holographic display showed what remained of Korthak space. Empty worlds, silent stations. 16 billion people simply gone, relocated to facilities that no one could find. The Korthak Empire, which had controlled 3 star systems for 1,000 years, no longer existed as a political entity. They didn't destroy them, whispered Council Chancellor Morith, an ancient being whose species had founded the Concordate itself. They erased them. Do you understand the difference? Representative Zeklon of the Vrex Collective clicked his mandibles nervously. Our intelligence services estimate it would take our combined fleets 50 years to accomplish what the humans did in 1 week, and they did it without killing a single Korthak. That's what terrifies me, Telvar replied. They had the power to commit genocide and chose not to. What kind of species develops that level of capability and keeps it hidden? For 2 centuries? The answer came from an unexpected source. Admiral Kresh of the warrior species Thanagarians had been silent throughout the session. His people were known for their military prowess and direct nature. When he spoke, everyone listened. I have studied human military history, Kresh said, in his deep voice. Before they reached space, they fought wars that killed hundreds of millions of their own kind. They developed weapons that could destroy their entire planet. Then they simply stopped. The chamber fell silent. Most species knew about humanity's violent past, but they thought of it as ancient history, primitive behavior from a less evolved time. They didn't stop because they became weak. Kresh continued. They stopped because they chose to. They built a civilization based on restraint, on controlling their own nature. But that nature never went away. Chancellor Morith activated the chamber's main display. It showed news reports from across human space, massive shipyards working around the clock, research stations coming out of mothballs, military academies training new officers. Our intelligence suggests humanity is mobilizing for something much larger than the Korthak campaign, Morith announced. They're building an entirely new class of warships, They're recruiting volunteers from every human world. Most disturbing of all, they're no longer hiding their technological capabilities. The display changed to show technical specifications that made several representatives gasp. Human ships with antimatter weapons powerful enough to crack moons. Nanotechnology that could dissolve enemy fleets at the molecular level. Biological weapons designed to target specific alien genetics. For 200 years, Moreth continued, humanity agreed to arms limitation treaties that restricted their military development. We thought we were containing their violent nature. Instead, they were developing all of this in secret while publicly supporting disarmament. Ambassador Yeldara of the peaceful Zephyrian Republic stood up. Her people had the most to be grateful for. Humanity had rescued 50,000 Zephyrians from Korthak slave camps, but even she looked frightened. "Honored Chancellor," she said, "my people owe humanity a debt we can never repay. But we must ask, what happens when they decide another species has crossed their line? What happens when they judge us?" The question hung in the air like poison. Every representative was thinking the same thing. Their species had all done things that might anger humanity. The Alterian Republic had once enslaved primitive species on newly discovered worlds. The Vrex Collective still practiced forms of social control that humans might consider oppressive. Even the peaceful ethereals had abandoned less advanced species to die during natural disasters. President Chen's message to the Council had been polite but chilling. Humanity is withdrawing from concordant oversight. We will no longer seek permission for our actions or accept limitations on our technology. We advise all species to govern themselves according to principles of justice and mercy. Chancellor Moreth called for reports from intelligence services across the galaxy. What they learned made the situation even more frightening. Human agents have been identified in every major star system, reported Chief Intelligence Officer Vaxun. They're not hiding anymore. They wear masks with Elena Vasquez's name and operate openly. Local authorities are too afraid to interfere with them. "What are they doing?" asked Telvar. "Justice," Vaxun replied simply. "They've shut down slave markets on Rigel 7. They've exposed corruption in the Centauri mining consortium. They've forced 3 separate species to release political prisoners. They're not conquering, they're judging." The reports kept coming. On Zarian 4, human agents had arrived at government buildings with evidence of war crimes from decades past. Officials who had thought their secrets were buried found themselves facing trials broadcast across their homeworlds. The hegemony of Kor had been forcing primitive species to fight in gladiatorial games for entertainment. Human ships appeared in their space and simply took the gladiators away, leaving behind only a message. "This ends now." The Mercantile Guild had been manipulating food prices to cause famines on developing worlds. Their entire financial network collapsed in a single day when human hackers released evidence of their crimes, along with the locations of their hidden wealth. "They're not building an empire," Admiral Kresh observed. "They're becoming, what's the human term? Police. Galactic police with the power to relocate entire civilizations," Chancellor Moreth said grimly. "Police who answer to no authority but their own moral code." The chamber's communication system activated. President Chen's image appeared above the council table, transmitted from the bridge of the Elena Vasquez. Behind her stood Admiral Zhang and the masked figures of the Vasquez Corps. "Honored representatives," Chen said with calm formality, "humanity wishes to clarify our position regarding galactic governance." Chancellor Moreth found his voice. "President Chen, the Concordate Council is concerned about recent human actions. We seek dialogue to—" "Chancellor," Chen interrupted gently, "you misunderstand our relationship. We are not here to negotiate. We are here to inform you of new realities." The image changed to show human fleets patrolling space that had once been neutral territory. Massive construction projects on worlds that had never been human colonies. Research stations studying technologies that violated every treaty the Concordate had ever written. "Humanity is no longer bound by agreements we made when we believed in shared values," Chen continued. "Elena Vasquez died because we trusted others to police themselves. We will not make that mistake again." Admiral Zhang stepped forward. "Effective immediately," Any species that practices slavery, genocide, or systematic oppression will receive a visit from us. We will not ask for permission. We will not file complaints through proper channels. We will act. And if we resist? Admiral Kresh asked, his warrior's pride struggling with tactical reality. Zhang's smile was colder than space itself. Admiral, your people are warriors. You understand strength. You've seen what we did to the Korthax. Do you really want to test whether you can do better against us? Kresh looked at the tactical displays showing human fleet movements. His silence was answer enough. President Chen's expression softened slightly. We don't want to rule you. We don't want to control your internal affairs, but we will not allow another Elena Vasquez to die because we chose peace over justice. The transmission ended, leaving the council in stunned silence. Finally, Chancellor Morith spoke the words everyone was thinking. We are no longer the dominant powers in this galaxy. Humanity has become something we never expected. Benevolent conquerors who don't need to conquer because everyone is too afraid to oppose them. Ambassador Telvar looked around the chamber at representatives who had come expecting to discuss trade agreements and border disputes. Instead, they were planning how to survive in a galaxy where humans decided what was right and wrong. The question, Telvar said quietly, is whether benevolent is something we can count on lasting. 1 year after Elena Vasquez died screaming in a Korthak torture chamber, Ambassador Telvar stood before a monument that had changed the galaxy. The statue showed Elena in her simple Peacekeeper uniform, hand extended in greeting, her face bearing the gentle smile that had convinced 1,000 species to lay down their arms. But this monument stood on what had once been Korthak Prime, now renamed Vasquez Memorial. Where 16 billion aliens had once lived, now only the statue remained, surrounded by empty cities that served as a reminder of what happened when someone pushed humanity too far. Telvar wasn't alone. Representatives from 43 species had come for the memorial service, not out of respect but out of fear. They needed to be seen honoring the human peacekeeper whose death had rewritten the laws of galactic civilization. President Chen appeared, on the platform beside Elena's statue, flanked by Admiral Zhang and the masked figures of the Vasquez Corps. The ceremony was being broadcast to every world in known space. 1 year ago, Chen began, her voice carrying across the silent plaza. Captain Elena Vasquez died believing that different species could live together in peace. She died believing that justice mattered more than power, that mercy was strength, not weakness. The assembled representatives listened in uncomfortable silence. Chen's words were soft, but behind them stood the reality of human power, fleets that could relocate entire civilizations, technology that made every other species' defenses meaningless, the ability to shut down any world's infrastructure with the push of a button. Elena's dream of galactic peace has come true, Chen continued. It simply took a different form than she imagined. The past year had seen changes that still made diplomats wake up in cold sweats. Slavery hadn't been abolished through treaties and negotiations. It had simply stopped. 16 species that had practiced various forms of forced labor found their entire civilizations relocated to rehabilitation worlds where they could contemplate the value of freedom. The relocations were carried out with the same terrifying efficiency the humans had shown with the Korthax. No violence, no destruction, no deaths. Entire populations simply woke up on different worlds, their societies intact but their freedom to oppress others permanently removed. Ambassador Kresh of the Thanagarians had learned this personally. His warrior culture had practiced ritual slavery for thousands of years. When human agents appeared with relocation orders, Kresh had ordered his fleets to resist. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. Human ships disabled the entire Thanagarian fleet without firing a shot, using weapons that simply turned off the aliens' technology. When Kresh woke up, he was on a beautiful world with everything his people needed to live, except the ability to leave or contact the outside galaxy. We're not prisoners, the human administrator had explained politely. You're students. When your species learns that strength doesn't require victims, you'll be welcome to rejoin galactic society. That had been 8 months ago. Kresh was still waiting. The changes hadn't been limited to obviously oppressive species. The Mercantile Guild had manipulated food prices for profit, causing famines on developing worlds. Human economic analysts appeared in their boardrooms one day with a simple message: find new business models or find new worlds to live on. The Guild chose adaptation. Food speculation was now impossible because human AI systems monitored every transaction, making market manipulation visible to everyone. The Guild's leaders still ran their businesses, but under constant oversight from masked humans who never spoke, but somehow always knew when ethical lines were being crossed. President Chen gestured to the empty cities around Elena's memorial. Some ask why we left these monuments to alien civilizations, why we didn't colonize these worlds for ourselves. She paused, looking directly at the assembled representatives. The answer is simple. We're not conquerors. We're gardeners. We don't want your worlds. We want your species to grow into something better. The metaphor made Ambassador Telvar shiver. Gardeners decided which plants lived and which were removed. They shaped entire ecosystems according to their vision of what should be. Admiral Zhang stepped forward. The human defense fleet now operates 3,000 ships across known space. We maintain research stations in every star system. Our agents monitor activities on 40,000 worlds. Some call this an occupation. Zhang's scarred face showed no emotion. We prefer to think of it as insurance. Insurance that no other peacekeeper will die for the crime of believing in justice. The assembled representatives knew the numbers. Human technology had advanced beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their ships could cross space in days instead of weeks. Their sensors could detect thoughts, not just communications. Their weapons could target individual people on planetary surfaces from orbit. But perhaps most terrifying was their restraint. In a year of reshaping galactic civilization, they had killed fewer than 1,000 beings, mostly those who had tried to harm innocents during the relocations. Every other change had been accomplished through overwhelming technological superiority rather than violence. President Chen activated a holographic display showing the new galactic map. Human ships patrolled trade routes that had been plagued by piracy for centuries. Former slave worlds now flew flags of independence under human protection. Species that had warred for millennia found their conflicts ending when human mediators simply made continued fighting impossible. Crime rates across the galaxy are at historic lows, Chen announced. Interspecies wars have essentially ended. Slavery, genocide, and systematic oppression have been eliminated. Poverty is declining on every world where humans maintain a presence. The statistics were undeniable. Galactic civilization was more peaceful, prosperous, and just than it had ever been. The cost was freedom. The freedom to choose evil over good, oppression over justice, cruelty over mercy. Some species call this tyranny, Chen continued. They say we have no right to impose our values on others. They claim we have destroyed the natural order of things. Zhang stepped forward again, his hand resting on a weapon that could level cities. The natural order killed Elena Vasquez. The natural order turned 50,000 Zephyrians into broken slaves. The natural order said that might makes right and mercy is weakness. His voice carried across the memorial plaza like winter wind. We tried the natural order for 2 centuries. We followed your rules, respected your sovereignty, trusted your promises of justice. Elena Vasquez died because we believed in the natural order. President Chen nodded toward Elena's statue. She believed in something better. She believed that civilized beings could choose justice over power, mercy over cruelty, protection over exploitation. The galaxy proved her wrong about your species. Chen's words hit the assembled representatives like physical blows. But Elena was right about one thing. Some principles are worth dying for. And as her death proved, some principles are worth killing for. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence for all the peacekeepers who had died believing in diplomatic solutions to moral problems. As the representatives filed out, each paused at the base of Elena's statue to read the inscription. Captain Elena Vasquez died believing in the possibility of civilized discourse between species. In her memory, humanity chooses to remain civilized. We advise others to make the same choice, but there was a smaller inscription, visible only to those who approached closely. She believed in peace. We believe in her. Ambassador Telvar was the last to leave. He stood before Elena's statue as the sun set over the empty Korthak cities, thinking about the species that had once called this world home. They were alive, healthy, cared for, and utterly powerless. A figure in a mask bearing Elena's name appeared beside him. The Vasquez Corps operated everywhere now, silent guardians ensuring that the new order remained just. Ambassador, the figure said in a distorted voice, your species has adapted well to the new reality. The Alterian Republic's treatment of primitive worlds has improved dramatically. Telvar nodded nervously. We learned from the Korthak example. We've reformed our colonial policies, established rights for all sentient beings under our protection. Yes, the masked human agreed. You learned that cooperation is preferable to relocation. Most species have reached the same conclusion. Telvar looked around at the empty cities. But some didn't. Some chose to test whether humans truly meant what we said. They discovered we did. The figure's voice carried no emotion, only fact. The galaxy is learning that Elena's rules are not negotiable. As Telvar's ship lifted off from Vasquez Memorial, he looked down at Elena's statue one last time. The woman who had died believing in peace had achieved her dream. The galaxy was more peaceful than ever before. It was just a peace enforced by the most powerful military force in galactic history, monitored by agents who could end civilizations with a few keystrokes, and maintained by the constant threat that stepping out of line meant joining the Korthaks in their comfortable exile. Elena Vasquez had wanted peace. Humanity had given it to her, whether the galaxy wanted it or not. In the end, perhaps that was the most human thing of all, taking responsibility for problems others preferred to ignore, and solving them with such overwhelming competence that resistance became impossible.